I can recommend it.
Maybe it should be take away and come to yeah, I think we could bring it as a takeaway.
After the teaching.
Or today.
No, like
No, I don't like that one.
I've had a picture.
This one's going to be short.
So when does your anti-gravity start?
so is it only meant
Friday.
No, Friday.
They gave me cards.
I guess that we
Not carrying on.
9 to 5.
unless you try the message.
I've seen this morning instead of I was saying she was on before it started, it was in Tuesday.
In pursuit of
Yeah, kind of like I've done next time, I've next time, I've done the head. Now we'll do this.
Because the Arya Triple here at one time, the Bhagavan was dwelling on massive Vulture Mountain in Rajagriha together with a great community of monks and a great community of Bodhisattvas. At that time, the Bhagavan was absorbed in concentrated categories of phenomena called profound perception. Also at that time, the Bodhisattva Mahasatva Arya Avalokiteshvara looked on the very practice of the profound perfection of his wisdom and beheld those 5 aggregates also empty from creation. Then, through the power of Buddha, the Venerable Shariputra said to this Bodhisattva Mahasatva Arya Avalokiteshvara, how should any son of a lineage strain who wishes to practice the activity of the profound perfection of wisdom? He said that the Bodhisattva Mahasatva Arya Avalokiteshvara said this to the Venerable Shariputra. Shariputra, any son of the lineage or daughter of the lineage who wishes to practice the activity of the profound perfection of wisdom,
this is correct.
those 5 aggregates also as empty from inherent nature.
Form is empty, emptiness is form, and
Emptiness is not other than form.
form is also not other than emptiness.
In the same way, feeling, discrimination, compositional factors, and consciousness are empty. Shariputra, likewise, all phenomena are emptiness without characteristics, unproduced, unceased, stainless, without state, not being condition not fulfilled.
Shariputra, therefore, in emptiness, there is no form, no feeling, no discrimination, no composition of factors, no consciousness, no eye, no ear, no nose, no tongue, no body, no mind, no visual form, no sound, no word, no taste, no object of touch, and no phenomenon. There is no I element and soul element, including no mind element and no mental consciousness element. There is no ignorance, no extinction of ignorance, and so not, including no aging of death and no extinction of aging of death. Similarly, there is no suffering, origination, cessation, and path. There is no result of wisdom, no attainment, and also no knowledge. Therefore, because there is no attainment, Bodhisattvas rely on the perfection of wisdom, the mind without aspiration and without fear, having completely passed beyond error, they reach the end point of nirvana. All the Buddhas who dwell in the 3 times also manifest their complete awakening to unsurpassable perfect enlightenment in realizing the perfection of wisdom. Therefore, the mantra of perfection of wisdom, the mantra of great knowledge, the unsurpassed mantra, the mantra equal to the unequal, the mantra that pacifies all suffering should be known as truth since it is not false. The mantra of perfection of wisdom is to declare. Shariputra, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva should train in profound perfection wisdom like that. Then the Bhagavan arose and made concentration and commended the Bodhisattva Mahasattva Arya Avalokiteshvara, saying, well said, son of the lineage, it is like that, it is like that. One should practice the profound perfection of wisdom, just as you've indicated, even the Tathagatas rejoice. The Bhagavan, having thus spoken, the venerable Shariputra, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva Arya Avalokiteshvara, and those surrounding their entirety, gods, humans, adorers, and gods, were overjoyed and praised that spoken by the Bhagavan. And prostrate to the gathering of the 3 chakras, who abide, kings in the 3 chakras, who abide in the holy yoga and using space. By your mouths a clear voice and magical emanation, look after practitioners like a mother and father. Samara Sashadora Samara Yate. Taita Om Gati Gati Tadagati Tadasam Gati Bodhi Soha. By the teachings of the 3 supreme jewels possessing the power of truth, may inner and outer hindrances be transformed, may they be dispelled, may they be pacified. Shunam Bodhi Soha. May all negative forces opposed to Dharma be completely pacified. May the host of 80,000 obstacles be pacified. May we be separated from problems and harmful conditions to Dharma. May all enjoyments be in accord with the Dharma, and may there be auspiciousness and perfect happiness here and right now. Sachi Bhoi Shurshin Veto Tamariya Brahmishi Nidhikhen Bhadi Sanye Shindu Sangye Chodam Soki Chonam La Chanchu Badu Dani Kyamsuchi Dani Shinji Pe Sonam Ki Drolam Benche Sangye Drupara Shu Sangye Chodam Soki Chonam La Chanchu Badu Dani Kyamsuchi Dani Shinji Pe Sonam Ki Drolam Benche Sangye Drupara Shu Sangye Chodam Soki Chonam La Chanchu Badu Dani Kyamsuchi Dani Shinji Pe Sonam Ki Drolam Benche Sangye Drupara Shu
강기 투쟁이 좀에 다 당지 방비체 당비 준된제 거동텔라 창세로 Good morning.
So we'll offer the
Yes, he. Not Dennis, and can Kusu Kanda use?
Good morning, Tom. How are you doing?
Good. The Chidangi Karsa. Now the Chu ever year the make Tony and PG Lambu Kutari independent English areas. Sangi Chilean Juda Manjuki and Sosu Gyuku, so Tebalia Rally was Tebayana Sangi Chile and Carso then Son Soina and Chok Chilean Zetuyach Dindi Yungudas Kizi Sozulia Tebasing each the Tebason in Mena Sangileya Chile the Nipo Karmu Kariyavania Nanzulaya Rokur Chiagi Tabshiro Zani Meduchik. Nanchu Jam Tadu Tinditos Redos.
Our success depends upon whether we have trust in the Dharma, whether we have faith in the Dharma. Our ability to engage the Buddha's enlightened activity also depends upon whether we have faith, in the sense that having faith means that you have an ability to engage the Buddha's enlightened activities, whereas when you don't have faith, you bereft, you lack the opportunity to engage with the Buddha's activities. So we have faith and trust in the Buddha. We develop some form of faith towards representations, the three bases that represent the enlightened activities of the Buddha. And without developing trusting faith in the Buddha, regardless of their power, however much power Buddha has, they will not be able to assist you.
These Kazimi and the Kunga Benzo Namaya Ani Pavan Jigdewanchuk Senchiglia, Pavan Jigdewanchuk Sena, Jeris Senchireva, Ani Pavan Jigdewanchuki, there was Kasham Solia, Pavan Jigdewanchuk Chichi, the Niji Chardemna, Temnach, tell the showdowns to get how large into that. Thing Kazan Dindishiva, and in Guatemala, down on that Tanishuk is long, so Jerisiki work you. And then Papa Jerisi said, the Namjing on the Shubiagi, and Yavatamji to Gupi, and it's 7 inch chamber, Pasha Shawski, or Tindichi, that Namjit Severlia, and Dinalaya, Papa Jitan, 7 Nalaya, and Yajong, low mamma shoes, Johnny, and it's tea, Jujimam shoes, Kurdos,
Pennsylvania, deep Pennsylvania, the Gao Pennsylvania. Geshe saw that in a library we had books associated with the Lord of the World, the Arya, the Lord of the World, which is one of the epithets of Chenrezig Avalokiteshvara. So he's also called the Lord of the world, or the one that wields mastery over the world. So there are about 5 volumes, 600 pages in each one of those volumes. So there's a massive and thick literature in Tibetan. So Geshe took those books at home and started to, read through them, and they contain quite a lot of accounts taken from the life stories of Chenrezig Avalokiteshvara, having also a lot of support from the Indian system, the Indian scriptures, providing different scriptural citations and different explanations which are based on the Indian sources.
Sanjile Teba Yongi, Papa Cheris, Jem Munding Yomaras, Ketzi Kerang Papa Cheris, Jekuyona, and Sumjile, Ninji Gongores, or Dindisonshas.
And such Chenrezig Avalokiteshvara is the embodiment of the loving compassion of all the Buddhas. So then for those of us who see ourselves as Buddhist, and if we see ourselves as Buddhist, then let's look at our attitude towards Chenrezig. Geshe reckons that if you're Buddhist, there's no one that is a Buddhist that would not wish at all to encounter Avalokiteshvara Chenrezig. It's not that we want to stay away from Avalokiteshvara. And that being the case, then in order to be able to encounter Chenrezig Avalokiteshvara, what we need to do is to nourish, to engender that sense of loving concern, compassion for other sentient beings.
That the Ingo Grosra, Tingo Kansananganzo, Sanji Tobiaki, Guzo the Ninji the Chanju Sem. Sanji Jevamaz, Sanji Komban, ya, Titon, Sanji Komban, Suzu Sanji Komban, one Chetugoras. There's a Ninji, Tandanganzugi, Sanji Jamden, and Papa Cheris, Jizun Joma, and Jambian Soba. Samalo Nanzu Kavule, Shade, Samalo Nanzin Jematuya di any Kanjing Nanzugi Chamba Ninji Chanju Sem, and Tomani Tobi, Sherry Soba, Tinjila ya, and touch him by Nyon Temba to be Gunsen Tagaramato, Gunsen Chiamandos.
Not only through cultivating loving concern for others, compassion, and bodhicitta would be able to encounter Chenrezig, to see Chenrezig, but at the end, we ourselves going to be able to attain the state of enlightenment through the cultivation of those states. But not only that, we also have other deities, such as, for example, Tara, Manjushri, and so forth, and our inability to see them, or this is to say to encounter them, lies within not having developed loving kindness and compassion, bodhicitta, wisdom that realizes selflessness to an utmost extent, to the level or to the degree to which we have developed an actual and genuine experience, consummate experience of compassion, bodhicitta, wisdom that realizes selflessness, and so forth. But in due time, when we are going to develop experiences, actual or genuine experiences of loving kindness and compassion and wisdom, we will be able to encounter those deities face to face.
On Direja, Dinza, Kashigota. Dinza Danganzugi, Ninji Dang, Sherab Chanchu Sim, Tashimbi Toki Tribigi, and Yayuku Didi, and Ninji the Chanju Sam, and Sherolaya, Combateni, Comdi Cheni, Jegoya Yimbadi, Umunis Rebas, Ra.
To develop compassion and wisdom, bodhicitta, to an utmost extent, to a consummate level, what we need to do is to develop our habituation step by step with bodhicitta and wisdom.
These are Ninji Yamnayana, Papa Cheriziki, Chindam Juya, chanju sing nyamne yona ani baba cheres gi chelab ngusu juya ani tombani to be shadow ki nyamne yona jijin jambi yang ani shangus siya ta chelab juya la soba ti yoba ani deba yona chel deba yona ani chug ton susula ya ani chilin juya pendo yoya ti yaja yatam direshas ro direshas.
So if you develop the practice of compassion and you do come to possess compassion, you will then receive the enlightened activities of Chenrezig. Similarly, if in your practice you develop wisdom and you develop an actual experience of wisdom, you'll also receive the enlightened activities of Manjushri. If you have faith in the Dharma, you will receive the enlightened activities and the benefit of the Dharma.
Tiri didi dana dinima jonju shodeyagi ingu di diredo ta sanja tamji gichedo lame zosang komba ngondu cheko yeza ti chiye gyu zo di ani tabda sherib ni yevimani ta tab gicha ani chanju gu semdi ninji zawa gyu chanju gu semdi ta ani jonju ki ani joja yona menadi di chagoras ra tenza ta jonju gu level ge di kalaya zu di ani chanju sem rangula kewa neba kon peya gilaya chi gaji ani tigju kari yobati ani ti thaya gi chedo di tabdi ani musu da manzo da sungu das tinza manzo di kogo das ra.
So then here we study Shantideva's Guide to Bodhisattva Way of Life, which is based on the development of the state of enlightenment for the sake of all sentient beings, motivated by compassion. So in order to attain the state of enlightenment for the sake of all sentient beings, we need to develop both method and wisdom. And here, Shantideva's Guide to Bodhisattva Way of Life, at this point in time, focuses on the method aspect that we need to develop in order to develop compassion, which is the root of bodhicitta, together with bodhicitta. So the subject matter of this text, Shantideva's Guide to Bodhisattva Way of Life, at least when we look at the 8 chapters that the text contains, at the beginning of the text, the first 8 chapters, to deal with the method side, the way of developing compassion and the mind of enlightenment. If we haven't done so, the way to maintain them, to prevent them from falling into decline, and then to increase them more and more.
Tiri dati ngajin tso khani yunguri islam di nganzu le tangbo wala ya ani ta ming dan tam dan chakba dan nyingkur la soba chi ani chongi kawe ya teni ta chanju sem kiya la ya ngajin nyingi kiya la ngajin ani tawa toba la ya ngajin yunguri is le tangbo kawe ya ngajin yunguri is ninza tizu rigdi nganzu le tangbo kawe ya katsu siki ani nyongwa ina ani gajien di nyong drog yobachi. Tenda ngoma disong dasra.
In order to develop compassion in the mind of enlightenment, we also need to look at the factors that obstruct, that hinder the development of compassion in the mind of enlightenment. So of the things that hinder the development, we find things like praise and renown and reputation and so forth. They could constitute obstacles and hindrances for developing compassion in the mind of enlightenment. So particularly as beginners, when you embark on the path for developing compassion and the mind of enlightenment, it is said that in some sense, it's better to have less praise, less reputation and so forth, so that they wouldn't act as a serious impediment for your development of compassion and bodhicitta. With that in mind, let's go back to the text and pick up from where we left off yesterday. So first of all, we'll look at, not this, when we look at
And we'll look at this, I think. All right, found it. So when we look at this, the outline, we started to look at a section of that states that it is unreasonable to be furious with that which hinders mundane interests, beginning with, as it is unreasonable to be furious with that which hinders one's own praise and renown. We're now looking at point B, reflecting on the benefits of our praise and renown being obstructed. So let's look at the second point, as it is something that can act to liberate one from conditioned existence. It is unreasonable to be furious with it. So the first point says, as that which hinders praise and so forth acts to liberate one from conditioned existence, from samsara, it is unreasonable to be furious with it. Let's read through verse 100. So it says, I who seek freedom do not need to be bound by material gain and honor. So why should I be angry with those who free me from this bondage?
Terda he sexualoga jikti, sexualoga jikti, penanganzuta, sexualoga jikti, that youngros, the yingros, that delaya, the konginki, mid-jam reanza, mid-regi, and soari, mid-relia, soari, ligros, the mikashilaya, sig the nimbushuch, sig the sound of pimbushuch. Youngros, Mikashila, the Chiktsua Majoroj, in Mikashila, Deva Majoroj, Tindi Yonsiros, the Dikarcheris, Sikorangi, Sikoran, Shologa Chik, the Shologa Chik Taran Remado, Shemakan Yomaros, in a Konging Milia, Jamdi Mambuch, Jami Mambuch, Yonadi, Kala Turis,
We read through this verse, we read through these verses here in this section, and because we are different individuals, those verses are read in a variety of ways. Each one of us might have our own individual way of relating to this verse. Each one of us has a different way of relating to that emotionally, in a sense that it elicits different emotions when we read through that verse. For some of us, we might be really nice, really eloquent, very inspiring. For another person, might be a bit senseless, or they would not have any particular emotion that comes up when they read through that verse. And the third person could find that verse to be not appealing even in the slightest. We do have a variety of reactions to the reading of such verse. So why is it that we have different ways of reading this verse?
Things that the Kajin Yungurs Ladi, Susugi, Samgam the 2 months Tony, Yungi of the Sewu Shujaras, Rasusu Debat the 2 months Tony, and it's the Yamuchama Chadi, so digredos. The Pigila only gear done toward 10 year last 7 months shingi. One Tani Tower the Tamji came at 20 Kanzajiki, and it soon the Nyambaina Gawashuj Kiech, Tara Re Samsongi, so the Ligres, Ta and the Mahimba, Pilayach, Che, and the 20 Niviana, so the and it's in dig the Gilia Michini, and it's in dig digi, sin dig, launch Tamienda, the Digilia Mini, and it Che Jangayobana, and it's sick di. Zanin Yimu Majorchik, Yema Devachik, Yungos, Yung Sigres, Yung Sigres.
A way of reacting to a verse like this depends upon whether it accords with our mentality, whether it is something that is associated with what you seek, with what you hope for. For example, if you're wishing for liberation, upon encountering a verse like that, you might think that this verse is spot on. It is exactly like that, the way that it is completely in accord with my seeking of the state of liberation. Whereas if your main focus is affairs of this lifetime only, in terms of seeking praise and reputation, wanting to have fame and renown and so forth, you might find this verse to be not inspiring at all. Not only not inspiring, a bit off-putting to a certain degree.
대답변은 간사 통부디 저튼닝이 끼우디 아니 송도 공디게 다 가와 간르지 끼그레스 슈바이나스라 디기디 다 저튼닝이 끼우기 상발이야 미무 독성 타직 도샤손디 직 방비 탑려야 준대봐 아니 까고래야 간주 직 미무 끼온디게 게 간다지기 규ген 간다지 돈이 니무리가 봐 하마고 봐 니무게 상가시시 차대는 딘디 연구여러스 다 딘디라야 아니 니무께서기 깬다 규 참을로 니무 용사 군 디드 디레다스 로 데네 까나 그냥 니무 디까 투르 세요서지 모르지 온디 쉬오지기 아니 가수르 쳔비 돈이 아니 손디 되니 체지 로 딘디니 비기울라 디용고레스 디용고라스 라
For someone that is seeking the state of liberation, a person that wants to be liberated needs to look at the way in which afflictions, anger, attachment, and ignorance, the three poisons, arise. These are the things that need to be abandoned. Those are the things that need to be discarded. But then, not knowing what the conditions are that trigger our afflictive states of mind, it seems that they rush up in our mind, in the sense that our mind becomes completely congested with afflictive states of mind. So getting an explanation such as this, which points out the conditions for the arisal of the afflictions, is something that does that seek liberation find enchanting, in that it helps to clear away that sense of confusion or the sense of unknowingness with respect to what triggers our afflictive states of mind. If you wish for liberation, you're going to think, that's it. Those are the conditions. These are such conditions that trigger my afflictive states of mind. This is what I need to stop.
데레다 베나 셀디 텐딩에 딩이지기 질라야 셀디기지 닝고년다다 아니 롱절을 써봐 디코나 텐딩에 딩이질라야 계란기 차도 빵고레 콘트로 빵고레 데샤 빵고레 슬라나 자와니니다 로라 마숑지 라 데샤다 차도 당 가게드스 메바이나지 아니 네타 메비 초로지 레치 근데 저 빵고레 슬라운디 도전 드릴 때는 중국을 슬라운디 자와니니 로라 마숑지 라 되발이야 계란 가게어 말이 안직 롱줄라 가게어 말이 사람 계란 드리질이야 차시니 아니 뒤즈 쇼드르 슬라운디 다드즈페 연하면은 찌데인자 다 델야 가오치 기어마슬라나 안 롤 바구마르와스
Whereas if your main priority is affairs that belong to this lifetime only, it means that what you're looking for are things such as respect and reputation, veneration, fame, praise, resources, and so forth. So if this is your main focus in terms of affairs that belong to this lifetime only, then an explanation like that says that you shouldn't have praise, you shouldn't have good reputation, or you shouldn't be attached to them, you shouldn't seek them, you shouldn't look for praise and reputation, renown, resources, and so forth. Those things will not make sense. Well, they will not make sense because it would seem that without them, without resources, without praise, without reputation, without fame, how can you get by in this life if that's your main priority? So therefore, if that's your main priority, Geshe feels that this verse will not be enchanting, it will not be inspiring.
딘자 단란즈 간지 추 제당디 추려야 뒤니진 추려야 가오지온데 추 제당디 만나와지 꼴문이 진 만나와지 라 아니 어디 용고가 아니 지인의 람람마 시온디 요충진 아니 쳔보스 간지 산기기 추텐사기 도자들이야 요충진 쳔보스 디나만디비기 아니 산기기 추텐사기 가서지야 미시와레스 다 디그 만탈이야 요충을야 Samba Kandaji Goris Laundi, Kiava Chimalaya, and the song down to Nichik. Never send this on the channel, and Sanji Chut and Sagi, and knew the Runguyo Maris.
So if you're seeking to have an unmistaken Dharma practice, what you need to do is to then think of how all the teachings of the Buddha are contained within the stages of the three scopes being. So we have the small scope, the medium scope, and the great scope. And the beings that are included within the three scopes as Dharma practitioners cover all the range of practitioners within the Buddha Dharma. In a sense that there is no Dharma practitioner that find themselves outside of the small scope, the medium scope, or the great scope. And that being the case, then, when we look at the small scope, the orientation of a small scope being begins with focusing on attaining a better state of existence, or a good state of rebirth in the next lifetime. Affairs of this life are not at all counted within the orientation of a small scope practitioner.
Diri Dinza Dachi Sangi Chutensaki, Dachi Tabshi Chutensaki, Nud Marumba Inaya, Sangi Yao Togo Mares, Nanzunan Shinki, Nanzu Suzuki Maimbaina, and Ko Yao Torsha Digi, and Suzuki Yunguros, Sangi Dio Mares, Sangi Yao Togo Yomar, Nanzola, Sevi Sigi or the Inaya, Pigi, Kaptu Layachi, Menda Masona. Tansag Kogobdi and Suzunguni, the Macho di Yunguyo Marmon, Sanji Sevi Sichin, Sevi Porvio Maris Natura.
And even if we are not vessels for the Buddha's teachings, the Buddha will not discard us. They will not exclude us from this observation with love and concern. Unlike, you might say, some other traditions that say that if you're not going to follow this tradition, then God or what have you, I'm not going to be happy with you. Here, even if you're not a vessel for the Buddha's teaching, still Buddha will never give up the sense of love and concern for you.
Tereda Sanji Zevi Kadu Nangan Tormeva Inza, Nanzu Kadu Ninaya, Sangileya, Manam Yabtubaina, and Sanji Tilinjugach, Manam Ti Toki. Manam Ti Toki Juxedi, Manam Yabsig Yug, and two Nami Yomeva Nanzolia, Zevi Sichin Shuyenza, and Manam Ti Top set Juhuras.
And since the Buddha always beholds us with the sense of love and concern, when we make prayers and supplications to the Buddha, we will be able to engage their enlightened activities. We make prayers and supplications to a being that never steps away, never wavers away from beholding sentient beings with an attitude of love and concern.
And Devana Yashan Dan Sigba the Tro turned Neva Ilas, Sigba, then Koa Neva Ila, Neba Dan Kurti, Sigba and Chinji Yimbe, Dingala Goyamis, call a Gishi Chagrimaton, call a Koji Guchagrimaton. Sigwali Trojic Gulan Dromenza, Tingal Gumu, the Net 20 years old, and Tabata Tamjikim Combatings.
We read through verse 100. Let's look at the commentary of Geshe Rinchen through this verse. So it says, further, since one aspires to liberation from cyclic existence, and since gain and veneration bind one to cyclic existence, one does not need such restraints, which means that if you aspire to liberation, you will not wish to have the restraints of praise and renown. You will think, this is not what I need. How can one be angry at that which liberates one from bondage by obstructing gain and veneration? It would be appropriate to like it.
Reta Neba the Kurdila Soba, Pigi, Longe Tigi, Kandachin Sivalia, Chinshin Dugres. Di that's which go does the Ranzolay. How do you let Tambola and D could get this Mevaina? and the time the kabu shows was
Now, one question that we need to ask is, what is the way in which gain and veneration bind us to cyclic existence? If we are not clear about it, we're not going to be able to relate to that verse properly. Particularly when we're beginners, we need to be very clear in our mind about the reasons for taking up such attitudes. So how can we be clear about the reasons for saying that gain and veneration bind us to cyclic existence?
that the kinds of several changes in the mundo call it easy you so the Numutusum there is. Then on the left tango walaya, never the good that we launch mum is levina, tell it them big, and chavare, and chado, tell it them big, down, or do sketching, Numu shook children, Genji chadoyanza, Numu shook on the call a kiwayagi, give mount, and Kisag 10 years, drugans at the dinner, zoning government to say. Digital sound go das ra kanji nimu ke gis cha do res ngan le tam bo ya
Gain and veneration act as causes for birth in cyclic existence from the viewpoint of triggering our afflictive states of mind. So the causes for being born in cyclic existence are the three poisons: anger, attachment, and ignorance. And gain and reputation and so forth trigger certain afflictive states of mind: pride and jealousy and aversion and so forth. And since they increase the power of our afflictive states of mind, you could say that they also get us closer and closer to again and again being born in cyclic existence. So from that point of view, gain and reputation bind us to cyclic existence.
ngan ta chi lonjo da kurdi da dindi le on di and deba cher drug das ra ya cha ya tam deba cher drug das ta ngi tingal nyamnyu do yor sra pena nga chunjung ka le ya ta chi thasal ya ra ya ga phi thonsip ti sur and gombe nong le devi ring le ya lawlo ni chi ring le ya ta lo mam shu ke dro yo mar go ni sum chu ta khong ro ras Dirjinlaya, Nimachi Kala Tusum, Trogo Yaya Chomba, Taga Rank, Deba Kaya Matobi, Tili Yaji, Damkadus, some of the Korkor Manas, Rock. That didn't such thing. That do see let me Yabato Chichi, and Kala Yari Yatsa Damgo Yatachi, Saga Yajili and Drogo Yatachi. What did it charge with us, a kanji? D and never the good than chomara, right?
Our seeking of resources and reputation, respect, and so forth can go stronger and stronger at the beginning. And Geshe says that at least when he looks at his own personal experience, you can see how that happens, how in a certain situation, when you get praise and when you get gain, when you get resources, when you have a good reputation, it can increase your afflictive states of mind. You're seeking of them. Like, for example, having studied in India for 20 or 30 years, and Geshe says that at the beginning of his monastic life at the monastery, the living condition were quite simple. So he was in a close proximity to the Indian locality or to the Indian village. Resources or conditions were not that great. So if you got fed 3 times a day, you'd be satisfied. In a sense that you wouldn't have those ideas or thoughts that you need more than that or better than that. If you had food 3 times a day and you continue with your study, that's enough. Whereas having done that and having come to a place like that, which is more affluent. So Geshe says that people give him different things, they offer him different things. He goes to restaurants, he has different types of food. You can see how there is an increasing desire to have better food, to go to a better restaurant, to have better things and so forth. So those things do bind us to cyclic existence.
nang tawajil seral lessons ra nga konda dawjila ya chuzu nga de chega yus chuba masin sijila ya and seral li dinga mi seral thania ondi konda chora chodu kanga dong de shara kanga dong de sha and the dijile ta ngai ta de geging sha de la dro and ni pinja chete nga tel de konda tel de shogi nga ni sedi ta gyurum shojila ta 사타르무 레르와 니마 마셔거든 니 세면도 니 세는 아니 실로 텐디 아니 갱가 쇼자던 거 쇼라스 아니 쇼자던 거 되기 잠모 칸도 아니 갱 탈레디 나오라야 발레 차교 가시 얘는 가시 깜보레서라 니모 마무 들어요 친주직도 딜람바레스 싸바레스 갱아 티트 깜보드 코나사스 Geshe
remembers the day of his arrival to Sera Monastery. So that was around March 1987. What date exactly, Geshe is not sure, but anyway, it was during the month of March. And it took quite a lot of time to get to Sera Monastery. He's been on the road for a long time. So he arrived at the monastery, and it was around the time that the bell rang, calling the students to come together again for classes. Anyway, Geshe arrived at the monastery, met with his brother, also his teacher, and it has been after such a long journey that Geshe went to bed, and he woke up not before sunrise, but sometimes after that, as he was a little bit tired, and he was called for breakfast. So it was called for breakfast at his teacher's place, and when he came in, he got just one mug of tea. And he was offered, his teacher kind of offered him a plate with a few pieces of bread. So it wasn't one whole bread, it was just like a bread, pieces of bread broken apart. Some of them were old, so they were dry. And there was one fresh piece of bread. So it was still a bit mushy, kind of wet and mushy. So Geshe said that he had that, it was absolutely delicious.
아주 겐다 롬부치니 아주 샤상나다 가든 치지고 또 공부 제출을 패도도 지 돈주 당한 지그제 안 게트는 텐슈치 필요와 텐슈피 만 소소 게트 참은 소소 아니 쇼게 될nga 깨지 치카시지 라히스 라이바 아니 간다 롬부치데 게닝 간래 가든 친구 쇼즈레스 땡아주 뛰나에 제닝 마리스 nga tambo yondi any gang do nonsense it do na me jim do chilai ba konz get to game to hakora konz mus mishas
최선 림버치선 통도 림버체 너 진짜 동갑에
피시리
뭐네
레레 든지 되면 되는 지
최선데 게네모체 단 니가라 텐슈되는
이제 게임 단데 게임 로직 창조죠 게임 단데 로직 주리
오케이 최선 이네 텐슈데 수렵도 그래 코니 니가라 So there was one occasion in the monastery where a long life puja was offered to both Geshe's teacher and to Tondrog Rinpoche, right? So Geshe had those two teachers at Sera Monastery, Khenso Lobsang Tsiling and Tondrog Rinpoche. So a long life puja was offered to both of them, and
Khenso Rinpoche 말도 단다 땡슈 피사디 단다 rinpoche 창조죠라 잘라긴 줄. 대다 rinpoche 줄. 경기만 공부 좋잖아. 이 Khenso Rinpoche 공부 좋잖아. 가정가 잘하더서.
오케이.
드디 당아주 참 따도 칭인디 rinpoche 창조 기인들이 딩안조가 칼라타야를 참 공부다고라. 단다 콜로지 줄.
It gets more and more complicated. Anyway, so it wasn't offered to both Geshe's teacher and to Tondrog Rinpoche. It was offered to the attendant or to the treasury of Geshe's teacher. So you have, in Tibetan language, the person is called Chanzu, the administrator, the treasurer, and so forth. So it was already getting older. It was probably around 80 years old, and Tondrog Rinpoche was around 75 years old. So in one of Geshe's recent visits to the monastery, long life puja was offered to both of them. So, as it is customary to say some prayers or some, a few good words about the people that are offered the long life puja, Geshe was saying a few words, and he recounted this tale of his arrival to the monastery, where he was new and tired, and he was offered some food, a few pieces of dry bread, and one fresh piece of bread, and how delicious it was. And said that people found it really inspiring. Some people had tears in their eyes.
아니 TV 콤보토 되바 샤다 차기도스 라 샤다 차기도스 딘자 아니 간졸이야 레 당보와라야 캬차 갸탐바 아니 치 녀버던 꿀뜨당 아니 차발로 소바 론졸 디디기 누구여바 갸차 갸탐바레샤스 슈치엘레 누구여바 갸차 갸탐바레샤스 라 딜르 땅 투다마투디 소소레야 라레와 캬피 란도니 야부지 몬트레다 만트레야 아니 라레바 차기도스 라
So anyway, going back to the text, if you have less praise and gain and renown and so forth to begin with, it will make your practice be better, more effective, more powerful. And this is something that the excellent masters of the past have also said, but also illustrated in a lifestyle of practicing in a humble way, without seeking praise and reputation, gain, and so forth, and developing very powerful and effective practice. So how do then we think about it? When we think about it, we can look at gain and respect, fame, reputation, resources, and so forth, and consider them to be to some degree detrimental to our practice. So we can then assess to ourselves, how much can we give up? How much can we relinquish of the seeking of those things? And if you are able to give up, to relinquish some of your seeking after gain and reputation, resources, and so forth, you will be able to understand better what is to be taken up and what needs to be cast aside, without being able to see how they are detrimental to you. Geshe feels that also your ability to understand what you need to do and what you ought not to do will be impaired.
제단다 파바 직대 원주기 남다 나노야 베나간주 아니 세지르지라야 TV 콤보토비 지즈멜라리비기 라마 마르바 아니 콩기 라마 텔로바 라 아니 텔로바 콩투서 요나메나기 아니 주체 사라 콩 넘버 2 아 비기 남기페 다지 교우쇼진 쇼다스 가시니 아니 지 냐로지 세 디게 세테 아 아니 가시 베나 텔로바디 냐바고 소르시 쇼다 아니 주진 사와라디 아니 다케니 아니 진센 세딩이다 어 딘지 남바신 쇼디 남다나 딘지 크우도스라.
As Geshe mentioned, he was reading through the narratives of the Lord of the World, Chenrezig, in the book that he found in the library. So there are some accounts that are telling of the life story of Milarepa, that relied upon his teacher Mappa, that relied upon Tilopa. Also, they relied upon the source of those teachings, the great Mahasiddha Sadaha. And in those stories, you can see how poor was the way of living. In some of the depictions or narratives of Tilopa, for example, is depicted as a fisherman, whereas Sadaha is depicted as an archer going on a hunt after living beings or after animals.
어디에 디자 다간지 간주 두소 야 두소 슈 사도자 간주 체체야 두소 고그로 왔어 라 두소 테스타 마투바나 컴지 텐투 마라스 라 요 토모메번에 컴지 치에메어지다 컴지 싸워지 텐고디 유rum부치 컴지 마데나 용고 마라스 텐자 컴지 텐야기 체도 두소 고겐자 두소 텐고도스 베나가라 초보치기에 코카징레네 테트리 텐조링이 자라야 코 비다 참로치 람로롱 데기더라 미치 페바지 탄다
Oh, that's good. Okay.
안 그게 그 레갈에 니지게디 코쇼키 레가치 마테로치스 그 레가 모고슬라이스 당보드반 고시디 콜이네 레가체스 고시 니바디 케제티니 엔덴즈 콜 레가치 테마스마스 그 쇼키 닝고 추추쭈니 당보 파드 가드이나 베절로 빈 콤기야 뜻이 되기에서 닝고 jelni chen kon de chuz ge bod ko lega toda de dia obeda da so se bi kom nyam ni che che du ha to khi nga ro tu zu di ani lega sam lo tan chi ning gu jel lega ro gon de chuz ge ba na le an khala do sa chu ge an ni sho ge chuz shi wa nga ba ya na chuz chu ni pa tu de ge la da di nge chen de lo ge do jing zu le ya ro lega che go nge so le ya ngi lawe zu di lobje ro tindris tuzu len to bana an kan tuzu lam tuzu di chola ma da ma che to e tabshi yung ro wasro
For that, we need to make a mind used to that, to not wanting gain and respect and so forth. Without developing habits, of course, it will not come to pass. And to develop habits, we need to give it a lot of time, to practice it over time. Without making sure that we allocate time for doing that, the habits will not be developed. Geshe has a friend that has been staying with him for the last few days, doing a retreat in Geshe's place, a Lamrim retreat. He told Geshe that in his approach to integrating practice with his life, he decided that he's not going to take up work in the morning. So in his place of work, he said that I'm not going to work in the morning. I'm going to start working from the afternoon. The morning is allocated to study and practice. Right. So first of all, he enrolled in a certain job, had to do, as a new person in the job, he just had to take whatever shift he was given. But then at some point he said that I'm not going to do mornings anymore. My mornings are allocated for study and practice. Then work starts in the afternoon. So when you're able to arrange your life according to that, then Geshe feels that you'll be able to then make the time to make your mind be habituated with those points. So when Geshe was speaking to his friends, he thought that it actually gives you can get a good perspective over how your approach is to the Dhamma. Looking at how other people do it, you can get some advice or you can find some good pointers to how can you implement it in your personal practice. So Geshe's friend said that, he's spending every day rising before dawn in reading text, doing meditations and so forth. And Geshe feels that that's a really good way of living a life. So of course some of us still need to go to work to earn a livelihood and so forth. But if you're looking for ideas or perspectives of how you combine the two together, that could be one way of doing it.
And the thing ngaji titun chado odus densam ligienza and toratang di nganzun le tangbo le zawni mugo inza ting gokshe di kanji and koali project chagienza telaya gawa goyamato and chosa yulchi zawni chagio maris that in the two shekugis.
Going back to the commentary, Yetsadama Rinchen says here, how can one be angry at that which liberates one from bondage by obstructing gain and veneration? It would be appropriate to like it. So remember that this section deals with how you stop anger arising at a case in which your praise and so forth are being obstructed. So suppose that someone is about to praise you and another person obstructs that. We would likely to respond to that with getting angry. Here Shantideva says that rather than becoming angry, think about the person doing you a service, because when we're being praised, when we're being respected, when we have good reputation and so forth, it's easy for afflictive states of mind to arise, pride and jealousy and sense of competitiveness and so forth. These are not the states of mind that we need in order to be liberated from samsara. So if praise and the like are being obstructed, rather than being angry at the person obstructing them, you should like that. You should be happy that those things that could trigger afflictive states of mind have been interrupted.
Niba Dunga di Gocho Jimbe, Tro Americanis, di Tebaso Gongin di Dunga di good and a Chosheres, Kanji Dunga go Kang the Mosley, Tichato Gelza, Hilia, and Trosagi Gilmaris, Trosigi Maris, Dan Dunga Judela, Sangi Kin Generation. And
we continue with the next point in Shantideva's text in verse 101 that comes under the heading of, as it is something that cuts the avenues of suffering, it is unreasonable to be furious with it. So when your praise and so forth are being interrupted, it slams the door over samsaric suffering, and therefore it is unreasonable to be furious when that happens. Verse 101 reads, "Why should I be angry at the very doors that do not let me in, which are like Buddhas bestowing blessings to those who wish to enter the chambers of suffering?"
Tirda, the Dunga go ram, Dunga go cowards, cowards, Lana, and Suzu Gully, Chadan Yumudi, and Dunga go chagores, Chadan then Lang Bassa, Lang Namiti, Dungaris, D Rang Yongoras, in the and Chadan Goshedi, Dunga go and the Masu, Georgie Imbati, Geshe Yatamba, the Chagoras,
What are the avenues for suffering? The avenues, this is to say the gateways for suffering, are to begin with anger, attachment, and other afflictive states of mind, which promote actions that result in suffering. So therefore, when praise and renown are being interrupted and thereby anger, attachment, and so forth are prevented, it is like cutting or stopping the avenues for suffering arising.
That Dungan Jung de la Sedi, Chedang Dungalia, Dungan Dunginchik Yomaras, Dungan Dunginchik Yomaran, Sunja Tamji Chanyamba, Dungamundeva, Deva, Dungamundeva, Chanyamba, Chagol, in a Kamdi, Dungal and Jung de la Sedi, Kajin Sungwar Islamdi, Nanzu Dungal, Joju Koran and Somana Shingi, Devan Dejan Timu Rangi Devatan Jones. Dunga Tonde Semian, Dunga in the moment you said, Tichawanza, Nanzu Lunga Yisumgi, Pigi, Chedangi, Dunga Bashik, Yonya sort of Chediganza, Dunga and Ju Devanashin, Chabados, the Yina Yang, Sanji, Chenabki, Toki, Pigi, and Dunga Lea Modoma, and Godamasuna, Kaya Yonya di, and Telianga Kachin Troy. Long ago is Gaugon wage was.
When we look at verse 101, it says, "Why should I be angry at the very doors that do not let me in, which are like Buddhas bestowing blessings to those who wish to enter the chamber of suffering?" Looking at the last line in this verse that refer to those who wish to enter the chamber of suffering, who are they? Who are the people that want to enter into the hallway of suffering? Well, in general, we don't have beings that deliberately want to be happy. After all, we say that from a Buddhist perspective, all of us are equal in not wishing for suffering and wanting to be happy. All of us are the same in that sense. But still, as Shantideva said earlier, though wishing for happiness, sentient beings like being crazy destroy the causes of their own happiness. And while sentient beings do not want to suffer, they still rush towards the causes for suffering. So because we destroy the causes of our own happiness and because we rush towards the causes of suffering, here Shantideva says that we act like we want to enter into the chamber of suffering. So if it says that those gateways to the door, to the hallway of suffering are being shut, they're being stopped, then why should we be angry with that? As it says, why should I be angry at the very doors that do not let me in, which are like Buddhas bestowing blessings to those who wish to enter the chamber of suffering?
Sanji Kine, Shingi Lava Shentu, Dungaji Kambo Mutomi, Gompar, Nietu Kyo, Tell Dan Chedar Tro. He did that Shinya Damasun, Chimbo Yimbe, and Gawarik Sos.
The commentary to this verse says, one wishes to enter the house of suffering, but like the blessings of the Buddhas, it becomes the threshold, not allowing one to pass into that house. How can one become angry at that? Since it is a great friend, it is appropriate to like it.
Iba Sonum Ki, Kechebala, Tro Miribala Sum, Sonum Yi Kechebi, Tro Miribatan, Sonum Yi Keg Maimba, Kubachevi Yud Sambao, Tambo Sonum Yi Kechebi, Tro Miribala Ni, Katul Chola, never Chawatang. Tella Kechena Rani, Sonum Yi Pache de Kyos.
We finished looking at the section that explains the benefits of praise and renown being obstructed. Let's look at the second point in the section that explains how it is unreasonable to be impatient with that which hinders the benefit directed towards yourself and your interest. The second point says that it is unreasonable to be furious with that which hinders merit. There are three points? Yeah, 3 points to that section. It says it is unreasonable to be furious because merit has been hindered. It is not a hindrance to merit, and then reflecting on it as an object one ought to have respect for. Now, when we begin with the first point, it is unreasonable to be furious because merit has been hindered. There are 2 verses. One should abide by the supreme austerity. And if that acts as a hindrance, you yourself will become an obstacle to merit.
Tambun Kadir Bichol never challenge, Divi Chuki Kesha or Tromerinaus. The two the Sonumki Ketche Sonumki Ketche Sonum does. Sonum di the Chedan Sonum Lay, Tadam, the two the Sonum di Tanda Lanzu Sangi, Combantovi, Kushi only. And Sonum gets so the issue so is so neat soon the devil at any, so neat double at any Sangi who is a tea, so neat Yager Kiwi, Sonum gets so said, it is so there are.
Of these 2 points, we begin with one should abide by the supreme austerity. Now, Shantideva begins with saying that it is not suitable to become angry with that which hinders mundane dharma. This is what he says with respect to verse 102. So it happens that our merit is being hindered. So what is our understanding of merit being hindered or obstructed? Well, there are many things that could be said with respect to merit, or different points of view that you could adopt with respect to your understanding of what merit is. One of them is to take merit to be one of the things that is required in order to attain the state of Buddhahood. So in order to attain the state of Buddhahood, we need to complete the two collections. We have the collection of merit and the collection of exalted wisdom, exalted knowledge. The collection of merit is one of the components that is required for becoming Buddha. It is unsuitable to become angry at that which obstructs your collection of merit.
디 소놈 디 조디 탑기차려야 탑기차려야 고고다스 조디 닌지당 장주 셈니디 다 상계 토야기 유 아니 소니기 야야기 소놈 소세디 닌지의 장주 셈디다 소놈 소 약슈디 차고레스 다디 비게 아니 콘 페야기 탑디 아니 진소파시 다 죽냠는디 이 탑내야 도고라스
Merit is associated with the method side. And of the different things that you develop in the method side, here compassion and the mind of enlightenment is said to be supreme. They are the primary things that you develop that contribute to the accumulation of merit. So in order then to continue to develop compassion in the mind of enlightenment, those things that contribute to merit, we also practice the 6 perfections, such as generosity, in order to build up more and more the storage of merit.
데데다 객징이 조디 차도당 나게당 공초당 대차를 소버티게 아니 소놈기 쪽조 인지의 찬죽 셈기야야 아니 객 뭐디 디치기도 왔어. 마도 비기 롱저다 인근 현달을 소버 까와 티기 원이지나 객치기요 말이스. 디기 trochigiores trochigiores 디 아니 단주시원이 디 가주스그 바갸르는데 땅투와나 아니 소주기 뒤츠디 안 디나소나지 까뜨그 초래에 내버치 로 비기 제투그로 왔어 다 까뜨그 초래에 내버려야 객체나 땅 원에 쏘는 거죠 냠죠 그랬어 발치기요 그랬어.
And since compassion and bodhicitta are main contributors to the accumulation of merit, things like pride and jealousy, attachment, anger, and so forth, they act as obstructions. They act as hindrances for compassion and the mind of enlightenment. So if someone is preventing your praise and renown, reputation, and so forth, they're not giving you real hindrances for merit. The actual hindrances are jealousy and pride, attachment, anger, and so forth. So when someone prevents your praise, gain, and so forth, they're not hindering your merit, they're doing you a service. They're supportive of you. In some sense, you could say that they're providing you with more time for practice. And as such, you have more time for waking up with difficulties. In that sense, it is an austerity. So if someone does prevent that austerity from taking place, they do act as a condition they do act as an obstruction for merit.
Tenzda kadri chola never chawani jigde bichi keche wala tro meri mans then sonun keche tela tro meri te zochung kadru yemenas sobat embali halaji kadru ji mewanza ani sobat embi gita gyola dogyonza sobat embi kokov ragyonza and tela zawani ta tro meri wajires tela dan minesans.
So then looking at verse 102, Shantideva says that it is unreasonable to become angry at that which hinders your mundane dharmas. Let's look at verse 102. It says, saying, this hinders my merit. With him too it is incorrect to be angry. If there is no fortitude similar to patience, should I not abide in that? If your merit is being interrupted and it gives you an opportunity to practice patience, which is regarded as an austerity, as it says, if there is no fortitude similar to patience, should I not abide in that? So therefore, saying that it is justified to become angry with someone that hinders your merit, Shantideva says that this is not the case. With him too, it is incorrect to be angry.
Devina Dandana Jimba the Tsultrim Sobi Sonum ki Kekcheji Troa Chena, Tela Troa Miriti, Sonum Tendumina, Troa Sobadan Sonshi, Nyambi, Katu Shen Yoga Mina, Dan Zobatella Minesin, Shinduya Neba Jigsaws.
Reading through the commentary to this verse, it says, beginning with the argument, though it is unsuitable to be angry at obstructions to worldly dharmas, enemies obstruct the merits of generosity, morality, and so forth. Shantideva answers through Getsadamarinchen, if one does not get angry like that, it is unsuitable to be angry at them, because if one aspires towards merit, then wouldn't one abide in patience, since there is no other austerity that equals patience with anger. It is extremely suitable to abide on patience.
Thank you.
Thank you. Before we leave it here for now, just a second, I think that Shannon last week set up when requested to say something about chai sponsors. Thank you to the sponsors of the chai, as people are contributing towards this now. So whoever contributes to chai, thank you very much. Please continue to do so. All right, let's look at the prayers.